crazy knowing what to kind of expect in certain years, right?
Yeah, honestly, I've sat with so many people and tracked their year cycles, and it's pretty mind-blowing when you realize how cyclical we are and how so many of us are just patterns repeating.
So we're all just numbers, basically.
Yeah, that's why you are cosmic code, right? I truly believe that, yeah.
Wherever you guys are watching this show, I would truly appreciate it if you follow or subscribe. It helps a lot with the algorithm. It helps us get bigger and better guests, and it helps us grow the team. Truly means a lot. Thank you guys for supporting, and here's the episode. All right, we're talking astrology and numerology today. Kaitlyn Kaerhart in the building.
Yeah, hi.
How's it going?
It's going well. I'm happy to be in Vegas.
Absolutely. So 2024, what is going down this year?
So 2024 is a universal year 8 in numerology, and this is a pretty big deal because 8 is the only number that has to do with money in the material realm. So, there are 9-year cycles, and there's only one dedicated to money and finances. So it's a really big deal. There's going to be a lot of big shifts globally when it comes to our financial institutions, the way that we interact with money. And 8 is also the number of power. So there's also going to be a lot of power shifts. And I think we're going to be seeing that playing out again with money. Yeah.
That's fascinating. And we were talking outside earlier that a lot of years kind of repeat themselves, right? After a certain amount of years. So it's important to look back at your previous years. And I was listening to you on a podcast saying to look through your emails even for those years.
So there are 9-year cycles. There's a universal year cycle. So that's what the collective is experiencing. And then there's a personal year cycle. So based on our birthday, we're all going through our own personal year cycle. So for example, 2024 is a personal year 6 for you, which is love and marriage and relationships. But universally, we're in a year 8, right? So that's all money and whatnot. But if you want to track, like, what were you doing in this last universal year 8? What were you doing in your last personal year? You would look at 2015 because 2015 was the last universal year 8 that we had. Yeah.
Interesting. So that year is when a lot of people started making money.
Yeah. Again, this is like the universal energy. So that there was shifts that were going on within money and power. And I think, again, like we saw some of that happening back then, but I think now we're seeing it even more. The past few years have felt a bit accelerated when it comes to the themes of each universal cycle.
It's pretty crazy knowing what to kind of expect in certain years, right?
Yeah, honestly, I've sat with so many people and tracked their year cycles, and it's pretty mind-blowing when you realize how cyclical we are and how so many of us are just patterns repeating.
So we're all just numbers, basically.
Yeah, that's why you are cosmic code, right? I truly believe that, yeah.
Wow. And it gets even deeper than that, right? There's people that go all in on the past life stuff as well. And we're just one iteration of hundreds of past lives. Do you believe in that as well?
Yeah, I do actually. I had a experience with a Reiki healer many years ago. And when I went to this Reiki healer at the time, I didn't really know what I believed in. And I had this profound experience with her where I actually saw a past life. And ever since then, I'm like, oh yeah, there's definitely something to that. So
wow.
Yeah, I'm actually very practical. And I think that unless you kind of experience something, be really open-minded. But for me, I definitely believe in past lives.
Same. Yeah, I'm always down to try certain things because I don't like to speak if it's not from experience.
Exactly.
So obviously I was skeptical going into it, but I went to 3 different past life therapists. 2 of them didn't work. And then the third one, we crushed it.
Wow.
I saw 8 or 9 of my past lives.
Wow.
It was pretty insane. And we cured some past life trauma as well.
That's incredible. Well, also in your own code, you have a prominent 11. Your name is a vibration of 11, which is the psychic. And also, if you have any master numbers in your chart, which you do, because 11 is a master number, that means you're a very, very old soul. And this could even be one of your last lifetimes. So that actually makes sense that you would go back and clear that karma.
That's what she was saying. Yeah, over 500 lives, I think.
Wow.
Which is nuts.
Oh my God. That's so cool though that you were able to kind of clear some of those and see some of those.
Yeah, one of them that stood out was I was a really stressed out businessman and I died of a heart attack at 62.
Oh wow.
And in this life, I used to get these heart palpitations all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty healthy and skinny. So that was weird. And then as soon as she cleared that, I haven't had one since.
Wow. Yeah, I had that with a client one time actually, where I was looking in his charts and I said, hey, I think there was a lifetime where you actually were a sailor and you died in a shipwreck. And he started crying and he was like, oh my God, I've never told anyone this, but I've always had a fear of water. I actually can't swim.
Wow.
And he was in his 30s. And then he like pulled up his sleeve and he had this tattoo of this big ship on his arm. And it was exactly what I was envisioning.
No way.
Yeah. So
That's
it's actually
crazy.
really crazy. And also within, astrology and numerology charts, you can see different past life connections between people, which I think is really cool when you go into synastry. Like if I was to look at you and your girl's charts, I would probably be able to be like, oh, you guys were romantic in a past life, or you guys, did XYZ in a past life. That's all in the charts.
Yeah, we found out we were actually soulmates. So we spent 32 lives together.
32.
Yeah, so I think anything over 30 is a soulmate, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was interesting. And you could just learn so much. I'd recommend people try it. I know it sounds crazy.
It does. No, I was not open at all when I went to that Reiki healer that I was saying. But I was at the point in my life where like I had tried therapy. I had like done everything to I felt like something was off. Like I wasn't happy. I had been through some things the year that I went to that Reiki healer. And I was like, what's my purpose? What am I doing?
Yeah.
But I was like, I got to try something. So I was like, fine, I'll go. This is like my last resort. And it really just blew me open.
Yeah, I've never felt more just at peace with myself than ever getting into all this spiritual stuff, actually. I was super skeptical of astrology growing up. All the girls,
too.
all the girls in my school would talk about it like, oh, I'm this sign. I'm like, that's not real.
Yeah. Well, also the horoscopes, though. I think a lot of people think astrology is a bit woo-woo, and it can be depending on like who's talking about it. Because you think about horoscopes like, hi, Virgo, this week's going to be great for you.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what? A lot of those are just made up. But when you actually go into the science of it and you go really deep, there are so many nuanced parts about yourself that are reflected from the charts that you're like, there's no way that there's not something to this, right?
Yeah, I think the horoscopes are so broad, but once you dive a little deeper and then it gets really specific and those are aligning up, you start to realize, wow, this makes sense. And I'll be at random dinners and just do people's birthdays, numerology and astrology, and they'll be like, that's so accurate.
Yeah.
Like it's happened multiple times. I don't even know the people that I'm doing it for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were just talking about that, how when I was living in New York City, I would sit across from these like finance bros who were like, this stuff is so stupid. But then they're always so curious, right? They're like, it's dumb. But then they're like, tell me something about myself. So I'd be like, cool, when's your birthday? Like, don't even give me the year, just give me your birthday. And I'd sit across them and be like, cool, you started your business in this year, you made the most money in this year, you got married in this year, then divorced in that year, and you had your first kid in that year. And their jaws just like dropped to the floor because they're like, how can you possibly know that? And it's like,
are you interested in coming on the Digital Social Hour podcast as a guest? Well, click the application link below in the description of this video. We are always looking for cool stories, cool entrepreneurs to talk to about business and life. Click the application link below, and here's the episode, guys.
it's all there.
Yeah. Are there certain life path numbers or zodiac signs you tend to get along with or even have enemies with?
I wouldn't say enemies. And again, I think it's important to look at the overall chart, right? Because it's like not enough to know that, you know, you're a life path 33, destiny 11. You have to look at everything. But I would say everyone has certain patterns. Like you'll notice maybe like all your best friends growing up were the same number or all your best friends were the same sign, right? And even when I first got into numerology, I started tracking everyone's numbers, like my whole family, like my best friends in high school, my best friends in college, my best friends post-college. And I noticed that at specific times in my life, I would manifest a specific number. So for example, when I had my spiritual awakening, I had a lot of life path 11s in my life, which makes sense because that's the most psychic number. That's the spiritual teacher, right? And then when I was in high school and I was kind of like around and having fun, I had a lot of fives around me, and fives are all about fun and experience and adaptability.
I know a couple fives.
Yeah. I love a good five.
Yeah, Michael Sartain's a five, and a lot of podcast hosts actually are fives.
Yeah, that makes sense because fives are all about being really adaptable. And again, the archetypes of each number, that's what you're here to teach. So if you're a five, you know, you're constantly riding this stream of change. You're here to be adaptable. You're here to have like constant new experiences. Travel is probably really important to your life. And that's what you teach others how to do, right? So again, you being 33 and 11 to master numbers, which is a very big deal and also quite rare to have your life path and destiny be master numbers. But you're really here to be a master teacher for people and to show people how to embrace like more of a spiritual view on life, but again, like in your own way, because that spirituality is so relative.
Right. When it comes to dating, getting married, just love in general, you said there's certain love years, right?
Yeah.
To focus on.
Yeah. So the years that have to do with love are years 2 and 6. And there are only 9-year cycles in numerology. And again, like you can fall in love and meet people in any year, but those are the years that guaranteed something will happen in love, whether you're trying or not.
Wow.
And like when we first started talking and got your birthday, I was like, oh my God, next year's your marriage year. And again, I didn't know anything about Sean at this point. And I was like, you might fall in love next year, or if you're with someone, you might take it to the next level. And you're like, oh my God, I'm engaged. We're planning our wedding.
Yeah.
So again,
Crazy.
that was so cool to like, oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's crazy because as humans, you think you have this free will, right? Almost.
Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of our lives are programmed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really see us as like kind of like little computers, like we're all coded, and numerology is the code to the simulation that we're existing in. But it's actually fascinating because before I even discovered numerology, I wouldn't have thought that I had so many specific patterns. I'd be like, no, every year is different. I'm different. But when you go back and you chart your year cycles, which I think is probably the most valuable part of numerology, you can see your own patterns and realize, oh my God, I'm doing the same thing in the same year cycles. And then when you recognize your patterns, you can then use that to your advantage, right?
Yeah.
To overcome any, like, I guess, negative patterns you may have or embrace more positive ones. But again, like nature is cyclical. Animals are cyclical. Everything is cyclical and pattern based in this world. So why would we not be?
Absolutely. So in that 9-year cycle, is there a year that's kind of negative where it's like a bad year almost?
Yeah. So I used to joke that personal year 9s kept me in business. Year 9 is probably the hardest year. It's the ending of the 9 years, right? So it's I nicknamed it the death year. It's just this year of like letting go and surrender and endings and a lot of closings. And again, like not all endings are bad. Some endings are really positive. Like maybe you graduate from school, right? That's a positive thing. But I tend to find that probably the hardest thing humans deal with is attachment. And in a 9, you really, all your attachments are kind of like, oh, you think you're attached to this? Good luck. You know, the universe will come and like shake you out of that to show
Right.
you like you really didn't need what you thought you needed. So
Wow.
the 9 is the hardest. It's this death to rebirth cycle. It's kind of like this cocoon moment.
Yeah, because you never see just, we were talking outside about smooth sailing. Like life's always pretty
Exactly.
cyclical, right? It's never just on the way up and no downs.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy because when you're on the way up, you feel like it'll last forever. And
Yeah.
then something bad happens unexpected.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, year 9 will humble you more than any other year. I think the money year, too, can really humble you as well. Because, again, there's a light and shadow to everything in this world. And just because we're in a money year doesn't mean you're going to strike it rich. Because you still have to work with the energy, right? You still have to have good financial systems in place for yourself. So like I've seen people go into year 8 and strike it rich and quadruple their income. And I've seen people go into year 8 and file bankruptcy.
Dang. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it was only good money. So it can go either way.
It can go either way. And that's why I always tell people to work with their cycles. Like when I was in my last personal year 8, 6 months before I started planning, I was like, okay, I want to really make the most out of this and I want to make as much money as possible because that is the energy of that year.
Right.
So I started thinking about all the things I wanted to launch in my business. And that's when I started writing my course and getting numerology reports together and restructuring how I work one-on-one with people. And then when the 8 came, I launched everything and it just flowed really well and was really successful. So again, I tell everybody we're in an 8, but you still need to like, you know, make sure like you're working on your debts, that you're working on, like, do you have a good relationship with money? Do you need to hire a financial advisor? Do you maybe need to like read a couple money books? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Even there's so many free resources on YouTube as well. So I encourage everyone to really think about like, how much money do you want to make and why do you want to make it and chart that out.
Yeah. YouTube University, baby.
Yeah, no, for real.
So it's important to track your own cycles, obviously, but I feel like tracking your close friends, your business
Oh my
partners.
God, yes. That is massive, especially in business and in your romantic relationships, right? Because there might be a time where, let's say you and your girl are not getting along and you want to have a serious conversation. But if you're in a 5, which is change and isn't really stable, and she's in a 9, which is endings, you probably don't want to have a really serious conversation in that energy.
Wow.
You want to maybe wait until you're in a 6 and a 1, because 6 is the vibration of love and 1 is the vibration of new beginnings. So again, like being able to even use the personal year cycles to also have empathy for what people are going through. You're like, oh man, they're in a really tough energy right now. Maybe I should be a little more understanding, and you know how to cater to people a little bit more. I think it's anyone who's in a partnership of any kind, they need to be tracking the year cycles.
That is so interesting. I feel like more people need to know this. They really don't teach this anywhere.
No, they don't. And I'm out there spreading the gospel of numerology. I know Gary too.
Yeah.
But I think it is growing in popularity. Like when Penguin Random House found me and offered me a book deal, nobody knew what numerology was even back then. And that was 2020, 2019. And now it's just wild to see how many people every day are finding me on social media. And they're like, oh my God, like someone messaged me the other day that took my course and he was like, numerology saved my marriage. I'm like, wow. And that, again, it's just so wild when you can look at these numbers and understand like people on a deeper level. And, people can be so judgmental, right? Like I've coached couples where a girl's like, why can't he just stick to one thing? And I'm like, well, he's a 5.
Yeah.
His gift is not sticking to one thing, and all of a sudden when you can view someone through that lens, you take down that judgment.
It's nuts. I've seen Gary do about 25 readings of people he does no idea, never met before, all spot on.
Yeah.
We'll be literally at a restaurant and he'll do it on the server. He'll go pale white because he's like, how did you know that? And it's crazy. Like, it's not a coincidence at this point. If you're 25 for 25, like that's crazy. And you're probably experiencing similar results with people you do too.
All my friends joke it's like my party trick. They're like, oh, Kaerhart, come on, talk to this guy, get his birthday, But yeah, again, it's just such a powerful tool. And the thing is, like, these have existed, numerology has existed since numbers have existed. Astrology has existed for thousands of years. Like, you see it in every ancient culture. Same with numerology. How could it have lasted this long if there's no truth to it? And again, a lot of the people, and I know Gary talks about this, a lot of the people who are higher up at these financial institutions or even in the big companies like Amazon, Netflix, like I'm reading for these people and consulting with these people and they're using these tools.
Wow.
And yet people want to, I don't know, like talk trash on it or like it's, it's like just give it a chance and just be a little open-minded, just see.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think these are tools. It's like free therapy at the end of the day. It's
for sure
good for reflection.
Yeah, Gary always says that billionaires use it, and he gets a lot of hate for that. But I've seen some pretty successful people use numerology, actually.
They do, straight up. Again, like if these people are using it at this high level, and it's existed for this long. It's like Chinese medicine, right? Like people want to, in the West are like, oh, Chinese medicine, acupuncture, but it's like it has to be working if it's stood the test of time.
Yeah. Yeah, Western medicine's only been around for a couple hundred years. Chinese medicine, probably thousands.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's just kind of like being open-minded, but I think there's a lot of stuff online where people are a little too like, I don't know what the word is, where it's like, oh, you're this sign, you're an Aquarius, you're this, and you can never be anything else. And I think that's really toxic because we do have free will. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think of Aquarius? I'm an Aquarius.
I love Aquariuses because they're such like a wild card. And Aquariuses, I think, are probably the most brilliant sign. Again, you're an air sign, so you're ruled by the mind, really, and just very quick, very witty, very innovative. And I love that energy, especially because I'm a life path 1 and a life destiny 1. So that's really kind of like my purpose too. So I love Aquariuses.
Yeah, I like them too. I don't really know much about the other signs, but there's people that say you should, when it comes to dating, I guess, you pair better with certain signs. Yeah,
for sure. I think that anyone can be with anyone. Like I said, I do think we have free will. My question is like, how hard do you want your life to be?
Got it.
That's my thing, right? And again, you have to look at the whole chart because as an Aquarius, you might not be the most compatible with, someone else's whose sun sign you might be squaring. Squaring is like a tension. But if the rest of their chart is really good for you, again, you really have to look at the whole chart. And I think that's why some of these people don't love astrology, don't love numerology, because they look at one thing,
Yeah.
one number, one sign, and they're turned off. And it's like, you can't read it that way. And again, that's why a lot of horoscopes are, quite frankly, because again, like that can't encapsulate you, this one little blurb of your sun sign, because you're so much more than that.
Yeah, that's why I was probably so skeptical growing up, because I would Google it and it'd be some generic stuff. But your report was 33 pages.
Yeah.
And it went into detail. And I read most of it. And some of it was like, I never even talked about it publicly. And it was on the report.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
I know. It was cool too, because your girlfriend, your fiance really liked it.
She loved it. She wanted one for her.
Yeah.
I got to get hers. But on there was destiny numbers, which I don't hear much about on social media. So what exactly are destiny numbers?
So we have our life path number, and that's probably the number you're most familiar with, and that's based on our birthday, right? That's like the most popular number in numerology. If you go on some calculator online, that's what you're going to get, right? Based on your birthday. A lot of those calculators are wrong, by the way, so be discerning. But the destiny number, sometimes called an expression number, is based off of your full birth name. So not your married name, not your nickname, your full legal birth name, what you were born with, right? And again, numerology believes that, we choose our birthday, we choose our name, everything is vibration and frequency. So like the letters in your name actually add up to, they correspond with numbers. So we add that up, and that's your destiny number. Now, it's really important to know your destiny number, because that is actually how you're going to achieve your life path number. Your life path number is who you are, but the destiny / again, sometimes called an expression number, is how your life path expresses itself.
Wow.
And those combinations are extremely unique. So like, let's say your destiny number is an 11, right? So you are here to walk more of a spiritual path. And that's how you're going to achieve your destiny of your life path 33, sorry. But let's say your destiny was an 8. Then that would mean that your 33 life path is expressed through money and the material realm. That's very different than it being expressed through an 11, which is more spiritual and psychic energy and being more of a thought leader.
Interesting.
So I always tell people, like, if you want to change your life in numerology, you need to know 3 numbers: your life path, your life destiny, and your personal year cycles. Just those alone will change your life.
Wow. That is so fascinating. And that makes a lot of sense, because a big chunk of my life, the past 6 years, was based on money. And I didn't feel entirely fulfilled, honestly. But the past year with the podcast, having on guests like yourself and other spiritual leaders, I felt so like at peace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the money's still coming in decent, but I just feel way better about myself.
Yeah, because your path is linked to that. And, I really feel for my 11s, anyone who has a life path or life destiny 11, because I think it is one of the harder paths. Because when that is one of your prominent numbers, you're meant to value intuition over rational thought, which is like the exact opposite of what society conditions us to do. We're supposed to be rational and like psychic, intuition, all that. Just ignore that. Do what you think is right in your mind. But for you, the path will open up more the more you trust your gut, and the more that you trust your psychic intuition and your gut instincts. And again, I'm sure you've had so many moments in your life where you're like, this makes no rational sense that I'm about to do this, but it just feels right and I have to do it.
Yeah.
And for you, that's really going to lead you down the path you're meant to be. And again, that could sound like generic advice for anybody, but it's actually not the case for everyone. Some people are meant to be a little more methodical and practical, not so intuitive. But for you, that's one of your superpowers.
That makes sense. What do you think about the Chinese zodiac signs, how each year there's an animal assigned? Are you a believer in that as well?
Yeah, I do. I think for me, I haven't gone so deep in Chinese zodiac that I could really talk about it. I just think it's not as specific as something like numerology is, or even astrology. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. You're a dragon, or you're a pig, and you might have these qualities. But again, I think like with astrology and numerology, it's really infinite what you can look at and what you can talk about, and the specific transits and the year cycles. Where I see Chinese zodiac as a bit more broad, but again, I don't know it as well as the other systems. Yeah.
Why do you think astrology and numerology has been like a lost teaching over the years? I know it was pretty prevalent many centuries ago, right? And it seems like it's kind of gotten lost.
So I think with the rise of Christianity, I think a lot of those tools were deemed as demonic and satanic and like evil, right? So I think a lot of people were kind of scared to interact with it. And again, that's not me putting religion down in any way. I think they both can exist because, again, I don't see numerology or astrology as belief systems. They're not. They're tools, right? Use them when you want. Like, even me, I don't check my charts every single day. Like I check them when I need to, when I feel called to. But other than that, like I'm living my life like a normal person, right? Nice. So again, I think some people are kind of turned off because there's still that fear. And, I've been living in the South for the past year, kind of. I'm like rarely there, but there are people that I'll meet who will say like, this is the devil's work. So I think,
in the South?
Yeah, people still think that sometimes. I mean, more and more people are open to it because, again, I think we have to dispel that. Yeah. We have to dispel the woo-woo because these are practical tools. They're for everyone. Mm-hmm. They're not just, the crazy astrology girlies. I know so many men who work with these. And again, a lot of men who are very high-level entrepreneurs, they're using these tools.
Right.
So we need to dispel the woo-woo, and we need to dispel that, like, it is some sort of belief system religion. I don't think that it's going against religion. It's not like a replacement for that. I think both can exist.
Yeah. There's so much subconscious programming. It's crazy.
I know. So much.
I started realizing it probably Trump definitely sparked it, but so I keep a dream journal. And whenever I watch like television, movies, or like even listen to music, some of that stuff will appear in my dreams, in my subconscious. And I'm like, wow, I got to be really selective what I listen to. Yeah. Because it's so easy. I used to listen to rap and hip hop all the time. And I was pretty depressed back then, and I didn't even put the two together. Oh, yeah.
Once you realize that, you are so specific about the content that you consume because it does kind of get trapped in your subconscious, for sure. I mean, especially with music, because music is, it is programming, especially when you're listening to the same words on repeat. You don't realize that gets stuck in your subconscious, and that can become a belief.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really important to be discerning.
Yeah, I'm all about like frequencies and energies now.
Yeah.
So there's certain music that is just so low frequency, and I can feel it now because I'm more in touch with my spiritual side. But before, I guess I wasn't just as much in tune with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like the more like open you are to these things and the more understanding you have, the harder it is to like go out and party because you're like, this song is making me feel really nauseous. I
don't go to clubs. It feels like so.
You can't.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Kanye, I think, talked about that, how 808s actually mess up the frequency of your actual aura, your energy. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you know what an 808 is, right?
808. I know he has an album about it, but what is it?
It's a specific like drum program that you use in a lot of popular music.
Okay.
Yeah, if you heard it, you'd be like, oh yeah, I know what
that
is. Yeah.
And that's in a lot of songs, I bet.
Like almost everything that's on the radio.
Damn.
Which is interesting because I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but whenever I turn on the radio and listen, I feel really like tired and just drained. Like, again, I think a lot of that is in popular music.
Yeah, and the news, honestly. I used to watch the news a lot growing up.
Yeah.
And I would go to school so low, like just tired. And it must be in the news stations too. I
mean, there's just so much programming out there.
Yeah.
And I think, again, like what I love about something like numerology is that we live in a numeric system, period. There's not a day that goes by where you're not interacting with math and numbers, whether that's like your bank account or, you're on a computer and that's made up of coding. Yep. Like everything is based on numbers. And so when you can understand frequencies, numbers, energy, it just opens up your whole world. Like a lot of people I've worked with who I've taught numerology to or who have taken my course or I've worked one-on-one with, they always say like, they can't explain it, but once they started working with numerology, it was almost like this wake up matrix moment.
Yeah.
Like it's so strange. And all of a sudden you see it. You're like, oh my God, it's all so clear that all the programming, everything. And I'm sure, again, like you're quite into numerology. So maybe that was one of your entry points to kind of looking around and being like, I can't listen to this music anymore. I can't go clubbing anymore.
You start noticing things wherever you walk, honestly. It's crazy. Like we used to joke as kids about living in a video game. But we actually are, I think.
No, I think that we live in a simulation, and I think that numerology are the codes to that simulation.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, how can you base things off of the Gregorian calendar that hasn't existed for that long? And I'm like, okay, yeah, it hasn't existed for that long, but we live our entire life by the Gregorian calendar. Like all of us have agreed that today is January 17th, right? So again, we're agreeing to that system. So it makes sense that mathematically, numerology is working with that system. And that is, again, the coding to the simulation that we're living in.
Right. I was just listening to Mateus De Stefano on Aubrey Marcus's podcast. And did you know that the calendar was invented because of taxes?
I did actually.
That is crazy. So that just made me think like time is just made up in general.
Completely.
And days and calendars. It's all made up.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting when you really contemplate it?
Very interesting.
Yeah, because it used to be a 13-month calendar, and that was based on the moon cycles, right? Because the moon is, I think it's 29 and a half days, something like that, it takes to go all the way around. And actually, a lot of women's menstrual cycles are synced up to the moon.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No. So
yeah.
Wow. I wonder why that is.
Maybe because we're made up of mostly water. The moon affects the tides on the planet, so why would it not affect us, right?
Yeah, I have heard that theory. Yeah, we're like 70% water, right?
Yeah, exactly. But again, like it makes sense. And in a lot of ancient cultures, 13 was actually regarded as a very sacred number because of this, because it lined up with the menstrual cycles. It lined up with the moon cycles. Again, it was 13 months. And the numbers all made sense, right? So
Yeah.
when you look at it now, the months don't fully make sense. And again, it might sound contradictory to say this, but even though the months, when you look at it from that lens, don't totally make sense, the personal year cycles, they always line up. Always, which is, again, why I look at this. It's like, I really do think this is some sort of, like you said, simulation that we're living in. And for anyone who might be more religious, like I don't think that because we live in a simulation, that means that God doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You know, I think all possibilities are possible. Like maybe the creator, whatever made this, you know, like both can exist at the same time.
Do you think humans have a programmed day that they die, or do you think that's controllable?
I do, actually. I do think that, you know, I've read a lot of like Dolores Cannon's work, and I've looked into past life things. And after all the tools, like I've been able to predict like when people's like parents are going to pass.
Wow.
Down to the day. Like
you serious?
That's in their charts. Yeah. So I do think that I really view Earth as kind of like this school where we're learning and growing and we're up leveling. And I think that before we come in here, we kind of have certain things that we want to accomplish and that we want to do. And we're like, you know what? I'll go in for like 70 years and get XYZ done. But again, I do think that we have free will. I think if we want, we can go off the path. You'll probably be miserable and unhappy. But again, I think certain things are destined, but we do have free will. And I think that's part of the game of being human.
Interesting. Wow. Kaitlyn, it's been fun. Anything you want to close off with or promote?
Yeah, I have a Numerology 101 course. So if anyone's interested in diving deeper into their numbers, you can check that out. It's at Kaerhart.com. And I also have numerology reports where the numbers are done for you. And yeah.
Awesome. We'll link it in the video. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for watching, guys, as always, and I'll see you tomorrow.